Guys, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I know it's been a minute, but I had to just make this video seeing as tomorrow is Halloween night. So how about we finish my segment with part 2, scary movies. Are you ready? You're in for a bumpy night. So if you really don't like horror films and you just can't handle them, don't fret. I have a video with PG-friendly recommendations to still get you in that Halloween spirit. So if you don't want to see or hear any of these recommendations I have for you, that's fine. Go click on my other video and see if those recommendations will appease you and you can enjoy for tomorrow night. So without further ado, how about we get started? So I have chosen 4 of my favorite horror films because horror films can be a hit or a miss. You can have really terrible ones, really good ones, and you can find some decent ones in the middle. And I have to say that my variety kind of varies throughout that entire scheme. So I'm going to start off with probably the lowest one, and that is Wes Craven's 1996 movie, Scream. Many of you might wonder why this would be on my list. Well, I have my reasons, and I'm going to explain it to you. First off, Scream has its moments of pure suspense and thrills, and it actually jumps at you with a lot of force, which is something that I really appreciate in horror films because you get so caught up in the suspense and anticipation that you really don't know what else to do with yourself when you're watching that. And in the first few minutes of Scream, they deliver a pretty poignant beginning, and from there you can find your footing and kind of see what you're expecting as the movie progresses. So I really appreciate that. And second, well, this movie was made in the 90s. I mean, you can see how dated this movie is. And it's an absolute cheese fest. It's what makes me love it so much. Wes Craven made this slasher film to be what it is. A movie that breaks the fourth wall with its dialogue and commentary, and even has some of the most predictable scenes. And it delivers that package in one, which is something that you rarely get sometimes. Because sometimes horror films try to be really serious. This one was borderline serious and borderline cheese fest. But it makes the package so great that it delivers you Scream. It's so good. Now, the franchise has continued on to 4 movies. All 4 of them I really do like. But the first one is the original, and it is my favorite. And I think everybody should watch Scream at least once. Like the title, it has screams, it has jump scares, and it's actually really funny at times too. So put that one on your list to watch for tomorrow night. Now, as we continue on the levels of horror films, this one was really fascinating to me. My best friend showed it to me one night when we were sleeping over, and it is actually Insidious Chapter 1 and 2, since they're both a correlation of one another. It's directed by James Wan, who in my opinion has to be like the new hip horror film director of this generation. He has made some very good horror films, and I haven't seen all of them, but they are on my list, and I'm going to be checking them off as I go. But I have seen Insidious Chapters 1 and 2, and I have to say that this movie freaked me out entirely. Why? Because James Wan used the element of sleep. And some people might wonder why sleep would be something to be afraid of. Let me tell you why. If you're a person who's never suffered of night terrors, of sleep paralysis, of nightmares, then maybe you don't understand how truly scary those feelings are. Even more importantly, how freaky your mind and your body can trick you at night, especially with the darkness. It can make you see things that you can't even believe exist. And that is exactly what James Wan uses. And that is what makes Insidious Chapter 1 and 2 so great. It's something as simple as sleep that can be so unknown that it freaks you out. It scares you because, you know what? The imagination in the brain has no bounds. And if that's something that you think you can handle, then I totally recommend that you watch Insidious Chapters 1 and 2. They're really good. I have seen both of them twice, and I still get freaked out. And I have to sleep with the lights on. Just because the aspect of sleep is such a big horror thing in this movie that they deliver and execute that really well. So, if that's something you really want to watch tomorrow night, go for it. Okay, so this is my second number movie, or whatever. This is the second one on my list, is what I wanted to say. I can talk about this movie so much. It's probably one of the best horror films I have ever seen, and that says a lot. My boyfriend showed me this movie a couple months ago, and I am talking about the 1979 movie Alien, directed by Ridley Scott. Sometimes horror films can be repetitive with their plots, and as I mentioned before, you can have very predictable scenes and have characters who are a cliche that it gets to the point where it's unoriginal. However, Alien was at a time that horror film were still finding their footing, and it's just such an iconic movie. I can't even begin to describe how famous this movie is, and it will live in an infamy just because of the way it was presented. So as you see, I'm rambling so much. I am trying to gather my thoughts as to tell you why this movie is on my list and why it's so good. So how about I shut up and just kind of tell you what makes this movie so great? It's the way that Ridley Scott used its atmosphere to trigger your senses. One of the most important things in a movie, especially a horror film, is its atmosphere. If you are getting a certain vibe, then you know that the movie is doing its job. Alien has an atmosphere that is beyond me, okay? It has a grimy, icky, and uncomfortable feeling throughout the entire film. Ridley Scott intended for this movie to be so off-putting that it is a quality to admire. I don't know how more to explain the fact that when a movie is playing and you can get yourself immersed so deeply within that universe, then you know that the director has found something to grab you. And that's what makes movies overall really great. And that is one thing I have completely admired about Alien, was the fact that Ridley Scott really knew how to prey on your fears and your senses. And every time I would watch this movie, it would just make me squirm and recoil all the time. Like, it was such a good way of doing that, you know, I still could enjoy the movie. It was just like I would see scenes and I'm like, oh, that's really creepy, or that's gross, why? But that is the point. You know, that is an aspect of horror when you're watching a movie. You're supposed to feel kind of like what the character feels, you know? It's something that directors rarely do very well. And Ridley Scott nailed it. And if you have never seen it, you'll know some of its most iconic scenes. But I highly, highly recommend that you watch Alien, at least just once. It was done really well. it's actually got a really solid storyline, and you have a badass, strong female lead, Sigourney Weaver. Dude, she's the best, and she kicks ass in this movie, and she knows how to be a survivor. I'm not going to say any more. Maybe you know the storyline, maybe you don't, but you definitely need to watch that movie. So do me a favor and watch it. So for my final movie, this one is definitely another one of the greatest horror films I have seen. And I am talking about the 1978 movie Halloween, directed by John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and its most famous slasher killer, Michael Myers. All right, let me bring it in. So the first time I saw this movie, I saw it with a friend on the phone, and it took away a lot of my horror experience when I was watching it, because when we would watch it on the phone, I could hear her TV ahead of mine, and when I would see the scene, I had already heard it, and it threw me off, and I just really couldn't enjoy it. So flash forward to years later in my film appreciation class, I had to watch the movie. Now this time, it was a whole different atmosphere. I watched it at night with my headphones on. One of the biggest reasons Halloween did so well was a good portion of its shots and its sound effects. And the sound effects really play in with your fear and your paranoia, which is something I really respect. John Carpenter managed to use his shots so well that it made you feel like somebody was watching you. For real. So it would go like you're watching the main character being watched through Michael Myers, and then also felt like somebody was watching you. It's Inception, for real. But it works. And that's how you know movies are good. Especially horror films. Horror films are supposed to make you scared. They're supposed to freak you out, and they're supposed to prey on all of your fears. And John Carpenter used it to his ability that he created shots that would be out of focus, that would be in odd angles. He would use pan shots. He would use undisturbed shots to bring in that creepy atmosphere, that stalker feeling of someone's watching you. And I absolutely loved that. And that is when all of that changed my view of Halloween, and it became one of the best horror films I have ever seen. I really think that everybody should watch it on Halloween, hence the title. It gives you pretty much everything in a horror film. And it's really good. And it also has creepy music that will freak you out, because it freaked me out, and it was also a movie I had to sleep with the light on afterwards. And constantly check my window to not see that freaky white mask, okay? So, get that one too. Just, you know what, get all 4 of them and watch them tomorrow night and sleep with the light on. That's what I recommend. Scary films, hello? What more do you want? But now we have to bring this to a close. That is all I have for you, my dear folks, and I really hope that you will all give them a watch at least once. And when you do, please let me know in the comments below, because I would really love to know what you thought of it. I hope everyone has a safe and fun Halloween. All right, guys. Happy Halloween, and I'll see you tomorrow. I won't see you tomorrow. I'll see you in my next video.